Hey everyone, before we dive into tonight's journey through the less glamorous side of ancient Rome, go ahead and hit that like button if you're ready to learn something that'll make you grateful for modern conveniences. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always amazing to see our global community come together, even when we're talking about, well, you'll see. Now, get comfortable, maybe grab a snack, and let's take a trip back to ancient Rome. But fair warning, you might want to finish eating before we get too deep into this topic. If you think your morning routine is rough, imagine being a Roman citizen in 100 AD, sitting in a public bathroom, looking around desperately for something to clean yourself with, and realizing that soft, white toilet paper wouldn't be invented for another 1,800 years. Welcome to the world of ancient Roman bathroom solutions, where creativity met necessity in ways that would make your worst camping trip look luxurious. Number 1. The Great Roman Bathroom Crisis. Picture this. You're living in the greatest empire the world has ever seen. Rome has conquered most of the known world, built incredible roads, massive aqueducts, and architectural marvels that still blow our minds today. They've figured out concrete, central heating, and even fast food restaurants. But somehow, nobody thought to invent toilet paper. This wasn't just an oversight. The Romans were dealing with a fundamental problem that would plague humanity for centuries. Human beings have always needed to clean themselves after using the bathroom, but the materials we take for granted simply didn't exist yet. No paper mills churning out soft, absorbent sheets. No understanding of modern sanitation principles. Just millions of people across a vast empire, all facing the same daily challenge. The scale of this problem was massive. Rome at its peak had over 1 million inhabitants crammed into a relatively small area. The empire stretched from Britain to North Africa, from Spain to the Middle East. We're talking about roughly 60 million people, all needing to solve the same basic human need without any of our modern solutions. What makes this even more interesting is that Romans were actually quite advanced when it came to bathroom infrastructure. They built elaborate public toilets called latrines, complete with running water, marble seats, and even social spaces where people could chat while doing their business. These weren't primitive outhouses. They were sophisticated facilities that put many modern public restrooms to shame. But here's where it gets weird. Romans would sit side by side on these marble benches with holes cut out, having conversations about politics, business, and daily life while relieving themselves. Privacy wasn't really a concept. These latrines were social hubs, places where deals were made and gossip was shared. Imagine trying to negotiate a business contract while sitting next to someone in what was essentially a communal toilet. The engineering was impressive. Fresh water flowed constantly underneath the seats, carrying waste away through an elaborate sewer system that still functions in some places today. They even had heated floors in the fancier establishments, because nobody wants to sit on cold marble in January. The Romans had solved the infrastructure problem beautifully, but they were still stuck with the fundamental question: what do you use to clean yourself? This is where Roman ingenuity really kicked in. Without access to soft paper products, they had to get creative. And boy, did they get creative. Some of their solutions were surprisingly effective. Others were downright dangerous. But all of them tell us something fascinating about how humans adapt to solve basic problems. The Romans were practical people. They didn't have time for squeamishness when nature called. They looked around, saw what was available, and made it work. Smooth stones, pieces of broken pottery, strips of cloth, even natural sponges. Everything was fair game if it could get the job done. But this wasn't just a Roman problem. Every civilization in history has had to figure out personal hygiene without modern conveniences. The difference is that Romans documented their solutions better than most, and their empire was so vast and well-organized that we can trace how different regions developed different approaches to the same universal challenge. What's really mind-blowing is that this situation continued for centuries after the fall of Rome. Medieval Europeans, Renaissance nobles, even early American colonists all had to deal with the same basic problem. Toilet paper, as we know it, wasn't mass-produced until the 1850s, and it didn't become truly soft and comfortable until the 1930s. That means for most of human history, everyone was in the same boat as these ancient Romans, scrambling to find something, anything, to maintain basic hygiene. The Romans, being Romans, turned this necessity into a system. They developed preferences, social rules, and even luxury options for those who could afford them. Some methods were considered peasant solutions, while others were status symbols. The wealthy had access to softer materials and cleaner options, while the poor made do with whatever they could find. This wasn't just about personal comfort, though. It was a matter of health and social standing. In a society where public appearance mattered enormously, and where disease could spread rapidly through densely populated areas, cleanliness wasn't just nice to have, it was essential for survival. The Romans might not have understood germ theory, but they knew that dirty people got sick more often. So when we talk about Roman bathroom alternatives, we're not just discussing weird historical trivia. We're looking at how an entire civilization solved a fundamental human problem using nothing but local materials and creative thinking. And trust me, some of their solutions were more creative than others. Number 2. The infamous sponge on a stick, xylospongium. Now we come to perhaps the most famous Roman bathroom solution, and definitely the one that makes modern people cringe the most. The xylospongium, or as it's more commonly known, the sponge on a stick. If you've ever wondered what it would be like to share a toothbrush with hundreds of strangers, well, the Romans basically did that, except it wasn't for their teeth. The xylospongium was exactly what it sounds like, a natural sea sponge attached to the end of a wooden stick about the length of a ruler. These weren't personal items. Oh no, that would be too easy. These were community property, shared by everyone who used the public latrines. Imagine walking into a public restroom today and finding one toothbrush that everyone was expected to use. That's essentially what Romans dealt with every day. Here's how it worked. Embrace yourself because this gets pretty gross. After finishing their business, a Roman would reach for the communal sponge stick, which was kept in a pot of salt water or vinegar between uses. They'd give it a quick swish in the cleaning solution, use it to clean themselves, then rinse it again and put it back for the next person. The logic wasn't completely insane. Salt water and vinegar do have some antibacterial properties, and the constant soaking was supposed to keep the sponge relatively clean. Plus, natural sea sponges are actually quite good at absorbing liquid and debris. From a purely practical standpoint, it was an effective cleaning tool. But let's think about the social dynamics here. In Roman public toilets, people sat shoulder to shoulder on long marble benches with holes cut out. Sometimes these latrines could accommodate 20 or 30 people at once. Everyone could see everyone else, and there was often just one xylospongium for the entire facility. This meant you had to wait your turn, and you had to use the same sponge that the guy next to you had just finished with. The Romans, being Romans, developed etiquette around this. There were unspoken rules about how long you could take with the sponge, how thoroughly you should rinse it before and after use, and who got priority if multiple people finished at the same time. Generally, older men and higher status citizens got first dibs, while slaves and young people waited their turn. Some latrines had multiple sponges, but even then, we're talking about maybe 3 or 4 sponges for dozens of users. The wealthy could sometimes bring their own personal sponge sticks, which was considered a sign of luxury and good breeding. Having your own xylospongium was like having a private bathroom in a world of communal facilities. The sponges themselves were harvested from the Mediterranean Sea. Natural sea sponges are actually living animals, though Romans didn't know that. They just knew these things were perfect for absorbing water and had a nice texture that wasn't too rough on sensitive skin. The best sponges came from specific regions known for producing high-quality specimens, and there was actually a thriving trade in bathroom sponges across the empire. Attaching the sponge to a stick served 2 purposes. First, it kept your hand further away from the mess, which Romans appreciated even if they didn't understand why. Second, the stick could be reused even if the sponge wore out or became too gross to clean properly. Some archaeological finds show elaborately carved wooden handles, suggesting that people took pride in their bathroom tools. But here's where things get really interesting. The xylospongium wasn't just used in public latrines. Wealthy Romans had private versions for their home bathrooms. These were often made with finer materials, softer sponges, and better cleaning solutions. Some even had multiple sponges so family members didn't have to share, which was considered the height of luxury. The cleaning solution was crucial. Most public facilities used salt water, which was cheap and readily available throughout the empire. Vinegar was considered an upgrade, with better cleaning properties and a more pleasant smell. The fanciest establishments used wine mixed with aromatic herbs, creating a cleaning solution that was actually quite effective and much more pleasant to use. Archaeological evidence suggests that xylospongiums were used throughout the Roman Empire for over 500 years. We found examples in Britain, Spain, North Africa, and the Middle East. Each region adapted the basic concept to local materials and preferences, but the core idea remained the same: a reusable, communal cleaning tool that could be shared among multiple users. The Romans even had specific pottery designed to hold these sponge sticks. These containers, called spongia, were often decorated with images related to cleanliness or health. Some had multiple compartments, one for clean sponges and another for used ones waiting to be cleaned. What's really wild is that this system worked for centuries. Despite what we might think about the hygiene implications, Romans generally lived longer and healthier lives than many other ancient peoples. Their emphasis on public baths, running water, and regular cleaning routines meant that even sharing bathroom sponges didn't necessarily lead to widespread disease. Of course, it wasn't perfect. Ancient medical texts describe various infections and health problems that we can now trace to poor bathroom hygiene. But for its time, the xylospongium was actually a pretty sophisticated solution to a universal problem. Today, when we complain about having to use single-ply toilet paper in a public restroom, it's worth remembering that for centuries, millions of people made do with shared sponges and somehow built one of history's greatest civilizations. Sometimes human ingenuity is just about making the best of what you have. Number 3. Smooth stones and pottery shards. If sharing a communal sponge with dozens of strangers sounds unappealing, you might think the Roman alternative of using stones would be better. You'd be wrong. While stones were indeed a popular choice for personal hygiene in ancient Rome, they came with their own unique set of challenges that would make even the bravest modern person think twice. The stone method was popular for several reasons. First, stones were everywhere and free. The Roman Empire stretched across diverse landscapes, from rocky Mediterranean coasts to the pebbly shores of northern European rivers. Smooth stones could be found near almost any body of water, making them the most accessible bathroom solution for the average Roman citizen. But not just any stone would do. Romans developed a sophisticated understanding of what made a good bathroom stone. The ideal candidate was smooth, about the size of a large coin, and had been worn down by water action until all the rough edges were gone. River stones were preferred over beach stones because they tended to be smoother and less likely to harbor salt deposits that could irritate sensitive skin. The selection process was serious business. Romans would spend time near rivers and streams, carefully examining stones for the right shape, size, and texture. The best stones were flat and oval-shaped, with a slight curve that fit comfortably in the palm of your hand. Too small, and they were hard to grip and control. Too large, and they became unwieldy and difficult to maneuver. Color mattered too. Light-colored stones were preferred because they showed stains and were more clearly, allowing users to determine when a stone was too dirty to use again. Dark stones might hide debris and bacteria, making them less hygienic options. White or gray stones from limestone regions were considered the gold standard. The technique for using stones required skill and practice. You couldn't just grab any rock and hope for the best. The stone had to be held at the right angle, with just the right amount of pressure. Too much force could cause injury to delicate tissues. Too little, and the cleaning wouldn't be effective. Experienced stone users developed calluses on their fingers and a practice technique that minimized discomfort. But stones weren't the only hard option available. Pottery shards, known as ostraca, were equally popular in urban areas where broken ceramics were common. Roman cities produced enormous amounts of pottery waste. Broken amphora, damaged roof tiles, and shattered household vessels created a steady supply of potential bathroom aids. The advantage of pottery shards was that they could be shaped. Unlike natural stones, which had to be accepted as found, pottery pieces could be worked with simple tools to create the ideal size and shape. Romans would use other stones to grind down rough edges, creating custom-fitted cleaning implements. The best pottery shards came from fine ceramics rather than rough terracotta. Broken pieces of expensive serving dishes or decorative items had a smooth, glazed surface that was both effective and relatively gentle. Some Romans even saved broken pottery specifically for bathroom use, storing collections of properly prepared shards for future needs. Archaeological sites throughout the Roman Empire have revealed caches of bathroom stones and pottery shards. These collections show clear evidence of human selection and preparation. The stones are uniformly smooth and similarly sized, while the pottery pieces show signs of deliberate shaping and edge smoothing. Regional variations were common. In areas with good limestone deposits, Romans preferred white calcite stones that were naturally smooth and non-abrasive. Near volcanic regions, they used pumice stones, which had the advantage of being naturally porous and good at absorbing moisture. Coastal areas provided access to stones worn smooth by ocean waves, which were considered premium options. The social aspects of stone and pottery use were different from the communal sponge system. Stones and shards were typically personal items. Romans would collect and prepare their own supplies, carrying them in small bags or pouches when visiting public facilities. This gave people more control over their hygiene and eliminated the need to share with strangers. However, this personal ownership created new problems. You had to remember to bring your stones with you, and you needed a way to clean them after use. Some public latrines had washing facilities specifically for cleaning personal bathroom implements, while others expected users to handle their own sanitation. The cleaning process was important, but not always pleasant. Used stones and pottery pieces had to be scrubbed with water and sand to remove debris. Some Romans used vinegar or wine for disinfection, while others simply relied on thorough washing with clean water. The implements were then dried and stored for future use. Storage was another consideration. Wet stones could develop mold or bacteria, while improperly cleaned pottery shards could become breeding grounds for various microscopic nasties that Romans couldn't see, but definitely could smell. Many people kept their bathroom stones in pottery containers with tight-fitting lids, often adding herbs or aromatic substances to keep them fresh. The durability of stones and pottery made them economical choices for families on tight budgets. A well-selected stone could last for months or even years with proper care. Pottery shards were equally long-lasting, though they were more prone to chipping or breaking if dropped on hard surfaces. Injuries were a real concern with both stones and pottery. Roman medical texts describe various cuts, abrasions, and infections caused by improper use of hard cleaning implements. Inexperienced users or those forced to use poorly prepared stones could suffer significant discomfort or even serious harm. Despite the risks, stones and pottery remained popular throughout the Roman period because they offered independence and personal control over hygiene. Unlike communal sponges, your stones were your own. You knew where they'd been and how they'd been cleaned. In a world where privacy and personal space were luxuries, having your own bathroom implements was one small way to maintain individual dignity. The psychological comfort of using your own carefully selected and maintained stones shouldn't be underestimated. In the communal world of Roman public facilities, having personal items that nobody else touched provided a sense of cleanliness and control that was otherwise hard to achieve. Number 4. Seashells. Just when you thought Roman bathroom practices couldn't get more interesting, we need to talk about seashells. While the average Roman citizen was making do with communal sponges or rough pottery shards, the wealthy elite had discovered what they considered the ultimate luxury: carefully selected and prepared seashells that turned bathroom visits into something resembling a spa experience. Not just any seashell would do for the discerning Roman aristocrat. The process of selecting the perfect bathroom shell was almost an art form, with specific species preferred for their size, shape, and texture. The most prized shells came from the warm waters of the eastern Mediterranean, where certain types of mollusks produced shells with smooth, curved surfaces ideal for personal hygiene. The Venus shell was considered the gold standard. These large, fan-shaped shells had several advantages that made them perfect for wealthy Romans. First, their size provided excellent coverage and control during use. Second, their natural curve fit comfortably in the human hand while conforming to body contours. Most importantly, their surface was naturally smooth and non-abrasive, providing effective cleaning without the risk of injury that came with stones or pottery. But Venus shells weren't the only option for the Roman elite. Cowrie shells, with their glossy, porcelain-like surface, were highly prized for their beauty as much as their functionality. These shells were often decorated with precious metals or gems, turning a basic hygiene implement into a status symbol. Imagine showing up to a public latrine with a golden-laid cowrie shell and you'll understand how Romans displayed wealth even in the bathroom. The preparation process for luxury shells was elaborate and expensive. Raw shells had to be thoroughly cleaned, with all traces of marine life removed. This involved soaking in various solutions, scrubbing with fine sand, and polishing until the surface was perfectly smooth. The edges were carefully filed or ground down to eliminate any sharpness that could cause discomfort or injury. Some wealthy Romans went even further, having their shells professionally engraved with family crests, decorative patterns, or even erotic imagery. These personalized shells were often passed down through generations as family heirlooms. Archaeological finds have uncovered elaborately decorated shell collections that were clearly treasured possessions rather than mere utilitarian objects. The economics of luxury shells were staggering. A single properly prepared Venus shell could cost more than a slave's monthly wages. The most elaborate examples, decorated with precious metals and gems, were worth more than many Roman families earned in a year. This wasn't just about hygiene. It was about displaying wealth in the most intimate possible way. Regional variations in shell preferences tell us a lot about Roman trade networks and cultural exchange. Shells from the Indian Ocean were considered exotic luxuries in Rome, commanding premium prices. African coast shells had different properties and were favored by Romans living in North African provinces. British shells, while not as prized as Mediterranean varieties, still found markets among wealthy Britons who wanted to maintain Roman customs. The social dynamics of shell use were complex. Unlike communal sponges, shells were intensely personal items. Wealthy Romans would never share their shells, and letting someone else use your bathroom shell was considered either an extraordinary honor or a serious breach of etiquette, depending on the circumstances. Some elite Romans maintained collections of shells for different occasions. Daily use shells were practical and comfortable, but not overly ornate. Guest shells were more decorative, used when hosting important visitors who might need to use private facilities. The most elaborate shells were reserved for special occasions or public appearances where wealth needed to be displayed. The logistics of shell ownership were complicated. Shells had to be cleaned after each use, dried properly to prevent bacterial growth, and stored in special containers to protect their surfaces. Many wealthy households employed servants specifically trained in shell maintenance, treating these hygiene implements with the same care given to fine jewelry or precious artwork. Transportation was another consideration. Unlike stones, which were durable and easy to carry, shells were fragile and required careful handling. Wealthy Romans traveling across the empire often had special cases made for their shells, lined with soft fabrics to prevent chipping or cracking during transport. The cleaning process for shells was more involved than other bathroom implements. Simple water wasn't sufficient to maintain the smooth surface that made shells so desirable. Most shell owners used perfumed oils to clean their shells after use, followed by polishing with soft cloths. Some added aromatic herbs or flowers to their cleaning solutions, making the entire bathroom experience more pleasant. Archaeological evidence suggests that shell use was most common in coastal regions where high-quality specimens were readily available. Inland wealthy Romans often imported shells at considerable expense, making them even more prestigious. The further from the coast, the more expensive and exclusive shell ownership became. Medical texts from the Roman period actually recommended shells for people with sensitive skin or certain health conditions. The smooth surface was less likely to cause irritation than rough stones or pottery, and the natural antibacterial properties of some shell materials provided additional hygiene benefits. The decline of shell use came with the fall of the Western Roman Empire, when trade networks collapsed and luxury goods became harder to obtain. But in some eastern regions, shell use continued for centuries, with Byzantine nobles maintaining the Roman tradition of elaborate bathroom implements. What's really fascinating is that shell use wasn't limited to the Roman elite. Modified versions of shell hygiene spread to other cultures through trade and conquest. Archaeological sites in former Roman territories show evidence of shell use adapted to local materials and preferences, demonstrating how Roman luxury practices influenced broader cultural development. The legacy of Roman shell use reminds us that even the most basic human needs can become opportunities for displaying status and wealth. In a society where public appearance mattered enormously, the bathroom was just another arena for competition and social positioning. Number 5. Wool and fabric scraps. While stones and shells had their devoted followers, many Romans discovered that soft materials offered the closest thing to modern comfort that ancient technology could provide. Wool and fabric scraps became the preferred choice for those who could afford them, creating what was essentially the ancient world's version of premium toilet paper. The fabric method wasn't available to everyone. Textiles in the Roman world were expensive, labor-intensive products. Every piece of cloth represented hours of work spinning fibers, weaving fabric, and often dyeing the finished product. Using good fabric for bathroom purposes was a luxury that only moderately wealthy families could afford, and even then, they rarely used new cloth for this purpose. Most fabric-using Romans relied on scraps and worn-out clothing. When a tunic became too damaged for public wear, or when household linens developed irreparable tears, the usable portions were carefully cut into appropriately sized pieces for bathroom use. This recycling served dual purposes. It extended the useful life of expensive textiles and provided comfortable hygiene materials. Wool was the preferred fabric for several practical reasons. Roman sheep produced wool with natural lanolin content that made the fabric somewhat water-resistant and naturally antibacterial. Wool also had excellent absorbent properties and maintained its softness even after multiple washings. Most importantly, wool could be washed in hot water with soap without falling apart, making it ideal for the repeated cleaning necessary for bathroom use. The preparation process for fabric bathroom implements was surprisingly sophisticated. Used clothing had to be carefully examined to remove any metal fasteners, decorative elements, or damaged areas that could cause injury. The remaining fabric was then cut into uniform pieces, usually about the size of a modern washcloth, and the edges were carefully finished to prevent fraying. Wealthy households maintained dedicated supplies of bathroom fabric, stored in special containers to keep them clean and dry. Some families had different grades of fabric for different family members. The household head might use pieces cut from fine wool tunics, while children and servants made do with coarser materials. This hierarchy of bathroom comfort reflected broader Roman social structures. The washing and reuse of fabric pieces created a complex household management system. Used pieces had to be collected, sorted, and cleaned regularly. This typically involved soaking in hot water with soap, followed by thorough rinsing and drying in the sun. Some households added vinegar or wine to the washing water for additional cleaning power and a more pleasant scent. Linen was another popular fabric choice, particularly in regions where flax was grown. Egyptian linen was considered the finest quality, with a smooth texture and excellent absorbent properties. However, linen was even more expensive than wool and required more careful handling during washing to prevent damage. The social aspects of fabric use were complex. Unlike personal stones or luxury shells, fabric pieces were often shared among family members. This required careful management to ensure cleanliness and prevent the spread of infection. Many households developed rotation systems, with each family member having designated days for using the best fabric pieces. Regional variations in fabric use reflected local textile traditions and available materials. In northern provinces, where wool production was common, woolen bathroom cloths were standard. In Egypt and other linen-producing regions, flax-based materials were more common. Some areas even used cotton when it was available through trade with India. The durability of fabric bathroom implements varied widely depending on the original quality of the material and how well it was maintained. High-quality wool pieces could last for months with proper care, while cheaper materials might fall apart after just a few washings. This made fabric bathroom supplies a significant household expense that required careful budgeting. Color was an important consideration for practical reasons. Light-colored fabrics showed stains and were more clearly, allowing users to determine when pieces were too dirty to use safely. However, darker colors were preferred by some families because they hid stains better and maintained a more pleasant appearance for longer periods. The storage of fabric bathroom supplies required careful attention to prevent mold, bacteria, and insect damage. Many households used pottery containers with tight-fitting lids, often adding herbs or aromatic substances to keep the fabric fresh. Cedar chips were particularly popular because they repelled insects while adding a pleasant scent. Some wealthy Roman families took fabric bathroom luxury to extremes, using pieces cut from silk garments imported from China. These silk pieces were incredibly expensive and were typically reserved for special occasions or honored guests. The smooth texture and natural antibacterial properties of silk made it an ideal bathroom material, but the cost put it beyond the reach of all but the wealthiest citizens. The medical benefits of fabric use were recognized by Roman physicians. Soft materials were less likely to cause injury or irritation compared to hard alternatives like stones or pottery. Medical texts recommended fabric pieces for people with certain health conditions, and some physicians even prescribed specific types of fabric for patients with sensitive skin. Archaeological evidence of fabric bathroom use is limited because organic materials decompose over time. However, written records and artistic depictions provide clear evidence that fabric was a common bathroom solution throughout the Roman period. Literary references describe everything from simple wool scraps to elaborate silk bathroom cloths. The decline of fabric bathroom use came with economic changes that made textiles even more expensive and difficult to obtain. As the Roman economy contracted in later periods, families could no longer afford to dedicate good fabric to bathroom purposes. This forced many people to return to harder alternatives like stones and pottery, representing a clear decline in living standards. What's remarkable about Roman fabric bathroom practices is how they demonstrate the importance of comfort and cleanliness in Roman daily life. Even in an era without modern sanitation, people were willing to invest significant resources in making basic bodily functions more pleasant and hygienic. The fact that families carefully maintained and reused fabric bathroom supplies shows how much value they placed on personal comfort and cleanliness. Number 6. The corncob method. Now we move from the urban sophistication of Roman cities to the practical solutions developed in agricultural regions across the empire, where corn cobs became a surprisingly effective and popular bathroom solution. Before you start picturing Romans using sweet corn like we know it today, we need to clarify that Roman corn referred to various grain crops, and the cobs that ended up in bathrooms were typically from harder varieties that we might call field corn or animal feed. The corn cob method was brilliant in its simplicity and availability. Throughout the Roman Empire's agricultural regions, grain production created massive amounts of waste products that farmers needed to dispose of anyway. Corn cobs, after the kernels had been removed for food or animal feed, were essentially free waste materials that would otherwise be burned or thrown away. Some enterprising Romans realized these cobs had the perfect properties for personal hygiene. They were absorbent, had a slightly rough texture for effective cleaning, and could be disposed of easily after use. The preparation of corn cobs for bathroom use involved several important steps. Fresh cobs with kernels still attached were obviously useless for hygiene purposes. Instead, Romans used cobs that had been thoroughly stripped of all grain, then dried and aged until they reached the right consistency. The ideal bathroom corn cob was dried enough to be firm and maintain its shape, but not so old that it became brittle and likely to break apart during use. The texture of properly prepared corn cobs was surprisingly well suited to bathroom needs. The natural ridges left by removed kernels provided just enough roughness to be effective for cleaning, while the overall surface remained smooth enough to avoid causing injury. The porous nature of the cob material made it highly absorbent, while the natural shape fit comfortably in the human hand. Different varieties of grain produced cobs with different properties. Some were larger and more durable, suitable for multiple uses, while others were smaller and intended for single use. Romans developed preferences based on regional crop varieties and personal comfort levels. Archaeological evidence suggests that certain types of cobs were specifically grown and prepared for bathroom use rather than just using agricultural waste. The economics of corn cob bathroom solutions made them particularly attractive to rural families and urban poor who couldn't afford luxury options like shells or high-quality fabric. In agricultural regions, cobs were essentially free for the taking. Even in cities, cobs could be purchased cheaply from farmers or grain merchants who were happy to sell what would otherwise be waste products. Storage and preparation of corn cobs required some planning. Unlike stones or shells that could be stored indefinitely, corn cobs were organic materials that could rot, develop mold, or attract insects if not properly maintained. Most families dried their cobs thoroughly and stored them in covered containers with herbs or other aromatic substances to prevent spoilage and maintain freshness. The single-use nature of corn cobs was both an advantage and a drawback. On the positive side, each bathroom visit involved a completely fresh, clean implement that hadn't been used by anyone else. This eliminated concerns about sharing hygiene materials and reduced the risk of transmitting infections. On the negative side, families needed to maintain larger supplies and deal with more waste disposal. Regional variations in corn cob use were significant. In areas where different grains were grown, the cobs had different properties and required different preparation methods. Some regions developed techniques for treating cobs with various solutions to improve their texture or add pleasant scents. Others found ways to modify the shape or size of cobs to make them more comfortable for different family members. The social aspects of corn cob use were generally more egalitarian than other bathroom solutions. Since cobs were cheap and readily available, there was less hierarchy in who got to use the best materials. Wealthy families might have access to cobs from higher quality grains or specially prepared specimens, but the basic corn cob bathroom experience was available to almost everyone in agricultural regions. Seasonal availability was an important consideration for corn cob users. Fresh supplies were typically available after harvest time, requiring families to plan ahead and stock up for the rest of the year. Some households developed elaborate storage systems to keep large quantities of cobs dry and pest-free through winter months and into the next growing season. The disposal of used corn cobs was relatively simple compared to other bathroom materials. Since they were organic waste, used cobs could be thrown into latrines, buried in gardens as fertilizer, or simply discarded with other household waste without environmental concerns. This made them particularly attractive for public facilities that didn't want to deal with cleaning and maintaining reusable implements. Archaeological evidence of corn cob bathroom use is limited because organic materials decompose quickly. However, written records from various parts of the Roman Empire mention corn cobs as common bathroom solutions, particularly in rural areas and among agricultural communities. Some Roman agricultural texts even include advice on preparing and storing cobs for household use. The effectiveness of corn cobs as bathroom implements was apparently quite good. The natural texture provided effective cleaning, while the absorbent properties handled moisture well. The biodegradable nature meant that disposal was never a problem, and the low cost made them accessible to almost everyone. For many rural Roman families, corn cobs represented the perfect balance of effectiveness, affordability, and convenience. Medical texts from the Roman period occasionally mention corn cobs in discussions of hygiene and health. Generally, physicians seemed to approve of corn cob use, noting that the natural materials were less likely to cause infections compared to reused implements that might not be properly cleaned. The single-use nature of cobs was seen as a hygiene advantage. The decline of corn cob bathroom use came with urbanization and changes in agricultural practices. As more people moved to cities and had less access to agricultural waste products, other bathroom solutions became more practical. However, in rural areas throughout the former Roman Empire, corn cob use continued for centuries after the fall of Rome. What's remarkable about the corn cob method is how it demonstrates Roman practicality and resourcefulness. Rather than simply discarding agricultural waste, they found a way to turn it into a useful household product that served an important daily need. The fact that this solution was so widely adopted across different regions and social classes shows how well it worked within the constraints of ancient technology and economics. Number 7. Water, vinegar, and hand techniques. For Romans who preferred the most natural approach possible, or simply couldn't afford any of the implements we've discussed so far, there was always the minimalist method, using nothing but water, vinegar, and their own hands. This approach was common throughout the Islamic world and parts of Asia, and Romans in contact with these cultures adopted and adapted these techniques for their own use. The hand and water method required no special equipment, no expensive materials, and no elaborate preparation. All you needed was a source of clean water and, ideally, some vinegar or wine for disinfection. This made it the most accessible bathroom solution in the Roman world, available to slaves, the urban poor, and anyone else who couldn't afford better alternatives. The basic technique involved using the left hand for cleaning while keeping the right hand clean for eating and social interactions. This wasn't just a practical choice. It became a deeply ingrained cultural practice with religious and social implications. The left hand became known as the unclean hand, used only for bathroom purposes and other unpleasant tasks, while the right hand remained pure for all other activities. Water quality was crucial for the success of this method. Romans had access to some of the best water supply systems in the ancient world, with aqueducts bringing fresh mountain water to cities throughout the empire. This clean water supply made hand-washing bathroom techniques both safer and more pleasant than they would have been with contaminated water sources. The use of vinegar as a disinfectant shows sophisticated understanding of hygiene principles, even if Romans didn't understand the scientific reasons behind them. Vinegar's acidic properties do indeed kill many types of bacteria and other pathogens, making it an effective cleaning agent that was far superior to plain water alone. The ritual aspects of hand-washing bathroom techniques were elaborate and deeply meaningful. After using the left hand for cleaning, Romans would perform multiple washing cycles with progressively cleaner water. The first wash removed the obvious debris, the second wash involved scrubbing with sand or soap, and the third wash used clean water to rinse away all traces of soap and contaminants. Some Romans added aromatic herbs to their washing water, creating pleasant scents that masked any lingering odors. Rosemary, thyme, and mint were popular choices, not just for their smell, but for their natural antibacterial properties. These herb-infused washing solutions were particularly common among wealthy Romans who could afford to add luxury touches to even basic hygiene routines. The left-hand taboo that developed around this cleaning method had profound social implications. Romans who used hand-washing techniques had to be constantly aware of which hand they used for different activities. Eating with the left hand, shaking hands with the left hand, or offering gifts with the left hand could be considered deeply offensive or disgusting, even if the hand had been thoroughly cleaned. This cultural division between clean and unclean hands affected everything from social interactions to religious practices. Many Roman religious ceremonies required participants to use only their right hand for sacred activities, while the left hand was considered unsuitable for touching holy objects or making offerings to the gods. Archaeological evidence suggests that hand-washing bathroom techniques were most common in the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire, where contact with Middle Eastern and Asian cultures introduced these methods. However, the practice spread throughout the empire as Romans encountered and adapted foreign hygiene customs. The medical benefits of thorough hand-washing were recognized by Roman physicians, even if they didn't understand germ theory. Medical texts praised the cleanliness achieved by proper hand-washing techniques and recommended them for people with certain health conditions. Some physicians even prescribed specific hand-washing routines for patients recovering from illness. Public facilities in regions where hand-washing was common often included special water stations with multiple basins for the different stages of cleaning. These facilities were designed to allow users to progress through increasingly cleaner water sources, ensuring that the final rinse used only fresh, uncontaminated water. The social dynamics of hand-washing in public facilities created interesting challenges. Unlike personal implements that could be used privately, hand-washing required access to clean water sources that were often shared with other users. This meant that the quality and cleanliness of washing facilities directly affected everyone who used them. Some wealthy Romans who preferred hand-washing techniques employed servants specifically to manage their washing water and supplies. These servants would prepare herb-infused waters, maintain clean basins, and ensure that fresh towels were available for drying. Having personal washing attendants was considered a significant luxury. The decline of hand-washing bathroom techniques in Western Roman territories came with increased urbanization and the development of other bathroom solutions. However, in eastern regions and areas with strong cultural connections to Asia and the Middle East, these methods continued to be popular throughout the Roman period and beyond. What's most interesting about Roman hand-washing bathroom techniques is how they demonstrate the empire's cultural adaptability. Rather than insisting on purely Roman solutions, many citizens readily adopted foreign practices that proved effective and practical. This cultural exchange enriched Roman hygiene practices and provided alternatives for people who couldn't afford material implements. Number 8. Public toilet etiquette and social rules. The social dynamics of Roman public toilets were far more complex than just showing up and doing your business. These communal facilities operated under elaborate systems of etiquette, hierarchy, and unspoken rules that governed everything from where you could sit to how long you could occupy a space. Understanding these social rules gives us insight into Roman society as a whole, where even the most private bodily functions became public performances. The most obvious rule in Roman latrines was the seating hierarchy. Public toilets were typically long marble benches with multiple holes, accommodating anywhere from a dozen to 30 users simultaneously. The best seats, usually positioned near the cleanest water sources and furthest from the main entrance, were reserved for the highest status individuals present. Senators, wealthy merchants, and other elite Romans expected to be offered premium seating without question. These preferred positions offered better ventilation, cleaner water flow underneath, and often had slightly larger holes cut into more comfortable marble. Some latrines even had cushions or fabric coverings on certain seats, reserved exclusively for important visitors. Age also played a crucial role in seating assignments. Elderly Romans were generally given priority, regardless of their social status. Young men were expected to wait for older citizens to choose their seats first, and children were often relegated to the smallest, least comfortable positions at the ends of the benches. The timing of bathroom visits created its own social pressures. Morning hours were typically dominated by businessmen and politicians who needed to start their day early. Midday brought merchants and shopkeepers during their lunch breaks. Evening visits were more casual, often social occasions where friends might plan to meet at the latrines for conversation along with other business. Conversation during bathroom visits was not just acceptable, it was expected. Romans viewed latrines as social spaces similar to modern coffee shops or bars. Business deals were negotiated, political discussions held, and gossip shared while everyone sat side by side, taking care of bodily functions. The ability to carry on intelligent conversation while using public facilities was considered a mark of sophistication. However, there were strict rules about what topics were appropriate for latrine discussions. Religious matters were generally avoided, as were overly personal family issues. Business discussions were welcome, but the most sensitive details were saved for more private settings. Political talk was common, but participants had to be careful not to offend anyone who might be listening. The sharing of cleaning implements created elaborate protocols. When communal sponges were available, there were clear rules about who went first and how long each person could take. Pushing ahead in line or hogging the sponge was considered extremely rude and could lead to public confrontation or social ostracism. Personal cleaning implements required their own etiquette. Showing off expensive shells or elaborately decorated personal tools was acceptable and even encouraged as a way of displaying wealth. However, being too obvious about your superior materials could be seen as boastful. The ideal approach was to use luxury items casually, allowing others to notice and admire without making a big show. The washing and maintenance of personal implements in public facilities followed strict protocols. Most latrines had designated areas for cleaning bathroom tools, but using these facilities improperly could cause problems. Splashing water on other users, taking too much time at washing stations, or leaving a mess were all serious breaches of etiquette. Privacy, while limited, was still respected in certain ways. Direct staring at other users was considered rude, even though everyone was visible to everyone else. Romans developed techniques for maintaining casual conversation while avoiding too much visual attention to what others were doing. Looking at the ceiling, focusing on architectural details, or studying graffiti were common ways to show respect for others' dignity. The graffiti itself was part of the social system. Writing on latrine walls was not just acceptable, it was expected. However, there were unwritten rules about what could be written and where. Insults directed at specific individuals present in the facility were forbidden, but general commentary about politics, love affairs, or social issues was welcome. Prostitutes and sex workers were generally excluded from the finest public facilities, forced to use separate, lower-quality latrines. This segregation was strictly enforced, with guards or attendants ensuring that respectable citizens didn't have to share facilities with people considered socially unacceptable. Slaves faced particular restrictions in public toilet use. They were only allowed in certain facilities, usually at specific times when their masters weren't present. Slaves were expected to be quick and quiet, avoiding conversation with free citizens and using only the most basic cleaning materials. Breaking these rules could result in punishment or being banned from the facility entirely. The maintenance of public toilets created employment opportunities, but also social tensions. Toilet attendants were usually slaves or very poor free citizens who cleaned facilities, managed cleaning supplies, and enforced social rules. These workers were simultaneously essential and looked down upon, creating complex power dynamics within the latrine environment. Payment systems in some public facilities added another layer of social complexity. Premium latrines charged entrance fees, automatically excluding the poorest citizens and creating more exclusive environments. Free public toilets were available, but they offered fewer amenities and less stringent social controls, leading to more chaotic and less pleasant experiences. Women's use of public facilities was heavily restricted and governed by different rules entirely. Respectable women rarely used public latrines, relying instead on private chamber pots or family facilities. When women did use public toilets, it was usually in segregated areas with female attendants and much stricter privacy controls. The enforcement of latrine etiquette was largely self-policing, with social pressure and shame keeping most people in line. However, serious breaches could result in physical confrontation, public humiliation, or even legal consequences if property was damaged or violence occurred. Regional variations in toilet etiquette reflected broader cultural differences across the Roman Empire. Northern provinces had different standards than Mediterranean regions, while Eastern territories incorporated local customs into Roman bathroom practices. These variations created challenges for travelers who had to learn local rules to avoid social mistakes. The decline of elaborate public toilet etiquette came with the economic and social disruptions of the later imperial period. As Roman society became less stable and urban infrastructure deteriorated, the complex social rules that governed bathroom behavior began to break down, leading to simpler, more basic approaches to public sanitation. Number 9. Regional variations across the empire. The Roman Empire stretched across 3 continents and encompassed dozens of different cultures, climates, and geographical regions. This vast diversity meant that bathroom practices varied significantly from one province to another, with local materials, customs, and environmental conditions creating unique solutions to the universal challenge of personal hygiene. In the cold, damp regions of Roman Britain, moss became the bathroom material of choice for many inhabitants. The native Britons had been using soft bog moss for personal hygiene long before the Romans arrived, and the conquering legions quickly adopted this local solution. British moss was particularly well suited for bathroom use because it was naturally absorbent, soft, and had antibacterial properties that prevented infection. The collection and preparation of British bathroom moss was a seasonal activity that involved entire families. The best moss grew in highland bogs where it remained clean and free from contamination. Families would gather moss during dry periods, then dry and store it for year-round use. The moss had to be carefully cleaned of debris and insects before being bundled into convenient sizes for individual use. British moss offered several advantages over other bathroom materials. It was completely free and renewable, making it accessible to even the poorest inhabitants. The soft texture was gentle on sensitive skin, while the natural absorbent properties made it highly effective. Most importantly, used moss could be composted or simply discarded without environmental concerns. However, the Roman military stationed in Britain initially resisted using local moss, preferring to import more familiar materials from Mediterranean regions. This created a thriving trade in bathroom implements, with merchants shipping everything from sponges to pottery shards to British garrisons willing to pay premium prices for familiar comforts. In the desert regions of North Africa, sand became the primary bathroom cleaning material. This might sound uncomfortable, but Romans in these provinces developed sophisticated techniques for using sand effectively and safely. The key was selecting the right type of sand and preparing it properly for personal use. The best bathroom sand came from desert regions where wind action had worn individual grains perfectly smooth. This sand had to be carefully sifted to remove any rough particles or debris that could cause injury. Many North African families maintained supplies of specially prepared sand, stored in covered containers to prevent contamination. The technique for using sand involved applying it with small amounts of water or oil to create a mildly abrasive paste that could remove debris without causing harm. The sand was applied with the hands or with cloth, then rinsed away with clean water. When done properly, sand cleaning was both effective and surprisingly comfortable. North African Romans also developed unique storage and transportation methods for their bathroom sand. Travelers carried small leather pouches filled with prepared sand, while wealthy households maintained large pottery containers with different grades of sand for various family members and occasions. In the mountainous regions of the Alps and other highland areas, Romans made extensive use of snow and ice for bathroom purposes. This might seem like an unpleasant option, but mountain snow offered several advantages that made it popular among highland inhabitants. Fresh, clean snow was naturally pure and sterile, providing excellent cleaning properties without any risk of bacterial contamination. The cold temperature was shocking but also numbing, reducing any discomfort from the cleaning process. Most importantly, snow was abundant and free throughout the winter months in mountainous regions. The use of snow required careful technique to avoid injury from extreme cold. Romans learned to work quickly and to warm themselves thoroughly afterward. Some mountain dwellers mixed snow with oils or heated it slightly to make the experience more comfortable. Summer alternatives in mountainous regions included specially selected stones from high-altitude streams and prepared moss or lichen gathered from clean forest areas. These materials were stockpiled during warmer months to supplement winter snow supplies. In the eastern provinces, particularly regions with strong Greek or Persian cultural influences, Romans adopted sophisticated washing techniques that used elaborate combinations of oils, perfumes, and specially prepared waters. These methods were often combined with steam baths and required significant time and resources. Eastern bathroom techniques emphasized purification and ritual cleansing rather than simple hygiene. Multiple washing cycles with different substances were common, often accompanied by prayers or other religious observances. The entire process could take much longer than Western Roman methods, but was considered more thorough and spiritually meaningful. The oil-based cleaning systems popular in eastern provinces used olive oil, sesame oil, or other locally produced oils as the primary cleaning agents. These oils were applied liberally, then scraped away with special tools called strigils, removing dirt and debris in the process. The final step involved rinsing with perfumed water and drying with soft cloths. In Egypt, papyrus scraps became a common bathroom material, particularly among the urban population of Alexandria and other major cities. The papyrus industry produced significant amounts of waste material that was perfect for bathroom use, creating an early example of industrial waste recycling. Egyptian bathroom papyrus was typically made from damaged sheets that couldn't be used for writing, or from the outer layers of papyrus stems that were too rough for fine paper production. This material had to be carefully processed to remove any sharp edges or rough fibers that could cause injury. The preparation of papyrus bathroom materials involved soaking in water to soften the fibers, then pressing and drying to create sheets of the desired thickness and texture. Some Egyptian households added aromatic oils or perfumes to their papyrus during preparation, creating scented bathroom materials that were both functional and luxurious. In the frontier regions along the Rhine and Danube rivers, Romans developed hybrid bathroom practices that combined Roman techniques with local Germanic and Celtic traditions. These border regions were cultural melting pots where different hygiene practices merged and evolved. Germanic tribes had traditionally used animal furs and prepared leather for personal hygiene, and Romans in these regions often adopted these materials. Bear fur, deer hide, and sheepskin were all used, usually after extensive processing to make them soft and absorbent. The preparation of leather and fur bathroom materials was complex and time-consuming. Raw hides had to be cleaned, treated with various solutions to prevent rot and odor, then worked until they achieved the proper texture. The best bathroom leathers were thin, soft, and highly absorbent. In Spain and Gaul, regional variations included the use of specific plants and herbs that were locally abundant. Some regions used prepared leaves from certain trees, while others developed techniques for using fibrous plant materials that could be processed into soft, absorbent bathroom aids. These plant-based materials often had additional benefits beyond simple cleaning. Many had natural antibacterial or antiseptic properties that provided health benefits. Some were naturally aromatic, making the bathroom experience more pleasant. The trade in regional bathroom materials created interesting economic opportunities. Merchants specialized in transporting moss from Britain, sand from Africa, and various other materials to regions where they weren't naturally available. This allowed wealthy Romans to use exotic bathroom materials as status symbols, much like modern consumers might pay premium prices for imported luxury goods. Archaeological evidence of regional bathroom practices comes from excavations throughout the former Roman Empire. Different regions show distinct patterns in the types of materials found in latrine areas, confirming the literary evidence for diverse local practices. The Roman military played a crucial role in spreading bathroom practices across the empire. Legions stationed in different provinces learned local techniques, and then carried this knowledge to new assignments, creating a gradual mixing and evolution of bathroom practices throughout Roman territories. What's remarkable about these regional variations is how they demonstrate the Roman Empire's cultural flexibility. Rather than imposing uniform bathroom practices across all territories, Romans adapted to local conditions and incorporated effective local solutions into their own hygiene routines. This adaptability was one of the keys to Roman success in governing such a diverse empire. Number 10. The health consequences. After exploring all these creative Roman bathroom solutions, we need to address the elephant in the room. How well did these methods actually work from a health and safety perspective? The answer is complicated, involving both surprising successes and devastating failures that help explain why Roman life expectancy remained relatively low despite their advanced civilization. Let's start with the obvious problem. Shared bathroom implements were a nightmare for disease transmission. The communal sponge-on-a-stick system, while practical and cost-effective, was essentially a perfect mechanism for spreading intestinal parasites, bacterial infections, and various other diseases among the entire population using public facilities. Roman medical texts describe a wide range of health problems that we can now trace directly to poor bathroom hygiene. Intestinal worms were incredibly common, with some estimates suggesting that over 60% of the Roman population carried various parasitic infections. These parasites caused chronic malnutrition, anemia, and digestive problems that significantly reduced quality of life and life expectancy. The shared sponge system was particularly effective at spreading pinworms, roundworms, and whipworms among users of public latrines. These parasites could survive for extended periods on damp sponges, even when soaked in salt water or vinegar. Each person who used a contaminated sponge had a high probability of becoming infected, then spreading the parasites to family members and other close contacts. Bacterial infections were another serious concern. The warm, moist environment of shared bathroom sponges was ideal for growing dangerous bacteria like E. coli, Salmonella, and various Streptococcus strains. These bacteria could cause everything from mild digestive upset to life-threatening systemic infections. Roman physicians recognized that bathroom-related infections were a serious problem, but they lacked the scientific understanding to identify the real causes. Medical texts recommend various treatments for digestive problems and skin infections, but they focus on balancing bodily humors rather than addressing hygiene practices. The use of hard materials like stones and pottery shards created different health risks. Archaeological evidence shows that injuries from bathroom implements were common, ranging from minor cuts and abrasions to serious wounds that could become infected. Roman medical texts describe various treatments for bathroom-related injuries, suggesting that this was a recognized medical problem. Anal fissures and hemorrhoids were extremely common among Romans who used hard bathroom materials. These conditions were not just uncomfortable, but could lead to serious complications including bleeding, infection, and even death in severe cases. The Roman military actually had to develop specific medical protocols for treating bathroom-related injuries among soldiers. The quality control problems with personal bathroom implements created additional health risks. Stones and pottery pieces that weren't properly prepared could harbor bacteria or cause physical injury. Fabric pieces that weren't cleaned adequately became breeding grounds for various pathogens. Even luxury bathroom options like shells and fine fabrics carried health risks. Improperly cleaned shells could harbor marine bacteria or parasites, while expensive fabrics that were reused without adequate washing could become contaminated with dangerous microorganisms. The hand-washing bathroom methods, while avoiding some of the problems associated with implements, created their own health challenges. Without modern soap and with limited understanding of proper hand-washing techniques, many Romans who used this method still carried significant bacterial loads on their hands. The left-hand taboo that developed around hand-washing bathroom practices actually helped reduce disease transmission in some ways. By consistently using only one hand for bathroom purposes and keeping it separate from food preparation and eating, Romans inadvertently reduced cross-contamination. However, the hand-washing method required access to clean water, which wasn't always available. Contaminated washing water could actually make hygiene problems worse by spreading bacteria and parasites among multiple users of the same water source. Regional variations in bathroom practices created different patterns of health problems across the Roman Empire. Regions that relied on organic materials like moss or corn cobs generally had lower rates of bathroom-related infections because these materials were typically used once and discarded. Areas that depended on hard materials like stones showed higher rates of physical injuries and complications from bathroom practices. Desert regions that used sand had their own unique health challenges, including respiratory problems from inhaling fine sand particles during bathroom activities. The social consequences of bathroom-related health problems were significant. Chronic intestinal infections and digestive problems reduced work productivity and military effectiveness. Wealthy Romans who could afford better bathroom materials had clear health advantages over the poor, contributing to social inequality. Roman military records show that digestive diseases and bathroom-related infections were major causes of disability and death among soldiers. Some military units stationed in areas with particularly poor bathroom facilities experienced epidemic outbreaks of intestinal diseases that decimated their fighting strength. The economic costs of bathroom-related health problems were enormous. Families had to care for members with chronic digestive problems, reducing household productivity and income. Medical treatments for bathroom-related diseases consumed significant resources without providing effective cures. Archaeological evidence from Roman cemeteries shows that intestinal parasites and digestive diseases were leading causes of death, particularly among children and elderly people who were more vulnerable to infections. Skeletal remains often show signs of chronic malnutrition and anemia consistent with parasitic infections. Some Roman physicians did recognize connections between bathroom practices and health problems. Medical texts occasionally recommend specific cleaning methods or warn against certain practices, but this knowledge wasn't widely distributed or systematically applied. The Roman military actually developed some of the most advanced bathroom hygiene protocols in the ancient world, including requirements for individual bathroom implements and regular health inspections. However, these practices were limited to military contexts and weren't adopted by civilian populations. Wealthy Romans who could afford private bathroom facilities and luxury cleaning materials did have significantly better health outcomes related to bathroom hygiene. This created a clear class divide in health outcomes that reinforced existing social inequalities. The decline of Roman bathroom infrastructure in later imperial periods made health problems even worse. As public facilities deteriorated and maintenance declined, the already serious health risks associated with communal bathroom practices increased dramatically. What's most tragic about Roman bathroom-related health problems is that many were preventable with knowledge and practices that were already available in other parts of the world. Proper hand-washing techniques, individual bathroom implements, and better understanding of disease transmission could have dramatically improved Roman health outcomes. The legacy of Roman bathroom practices reminds us how crucial proper sanitation is for public health. Despite their impressive engineering achievements and sophisticated urban planning, Romans never solved the fundamental challenge of safe, hygienic bathroom practices for large populations. Modern archaeological and medical research continues to reveal new information about the health consequences of ancient bathroom practices. DNA analysis of Roman-era parasites and bacteria provides detailed information about disease transmission patterns and helps us understand the true cost of inadequate sanitation. The Roman experience with bathroom hygiene offers important lessons for modern public health efforts. Even today, billions of people around the world lack access to safe sanitation facilities, facing health risks similar to those experienced by ancient Romans. Understanding historical sanitation failures can help guide more effective modern interventions. As we reach the end of this rather intimate journey through Roman bathroom practices, it's worth stepping back and asking ourselves, what does this all really mean? Why should we care about how people cleaned themselves 2,000 years ago? The answer reveals something profound about human nature and the hidden forces that shape civilization. Every single practice we've discussed today, from the communal sponge to the luxury shells, tells the same fundamental story. Humans will find a way. No matter how basic the challenge, no matter how limited the resources, people adapt, innovate, and create solutions. The Romans didn't have toilet paper, so they made corncobs work. They didn't have individual bathroom stalls, so they turned communal toilets into social spaces. They didn't have modern medicine, so they developed cleaning rituals that actually did provide some protection against disease. But this story goes deeper than just practical problem solving. These bathroom practices reveal the entire structure of Roman society in microcosm. The wealthy had their decorated shells while slaves used rough pottery shards. Regional variations showed how the empire absorbed and adapted local customs rather than imposing uniform practices. The elaborate social hierarchies that governed who could sit where in public latrines reflected the same power structures that organized every other aspect of Roman life. What's remarkable is how these intimate, private bodily functions became thoroughly public and social activities. Romans didn't see bathroom visits as moments of solitary privacy like we do today. Instead, they were opportunities for business discussions, political conversations, and social bonding. The latrine was just another arena for displaying wealth, negotiating status, and building relationships. This social dimension of Roman bathroom practices challenges our modern assumptions about privacy and bodily shame. We live in a culture where bathroom activities are intensely private, hidden away behind locked doors, and rarely discussed openly. Romans lived in a world where these same activities were communal experiences shared with neighbors, colleagues, and strangers. The health consequences we discussed reveal another crucial aspect of this story. Good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes. Romans were genuinely trying to maintain cleanliness and prevent disease. They developed sophisticated infrastructure, cleaning protocols, and hygiene materials. But without understanding germ theory or modern sanitation principles, many of their well-intentioned practices actually made health problems worse. This gap between intention and result appears throughout Roman civilization. They built incredible aqueducts that delivered fresh water to cities, then contaminated it by using lead pipes. They created elaborate public bath systems that promoted cleanliness, then filled them with bacteria by having everyone share the same water. They developed complex medical theories and treatments, then undermined their own health through practices we now know are dangerous. The regional variations in bathroom practices also tell us something important about cultural adaptation and imperial governance. The Roman Empire succeeded partly because it was flexible enough to incorporate local customs and materials rather than forcing uniform practices across all territories. A Briton using moss, an African using sand, and an Italian using pottery shards were all solving the same problem with locally appropriate solutions. This adaptability allowed the empire to function across vastly different environments and cultures, but it also meant that Roman identity was more flexible and varied than we sometimes imagine. There wasn't one single Roman way of doing things, but rather a collection of local adaptations unified by shared institutions and values. The economic aspects of Roman bathroom practices reveal how basic human needs create complex market systems. The trade in bathroom sponges, the preparation of luxury shells, the collection and processing of various cleaning materials, all of this represents economic activity built around solving fundamental bodily requirements. Even in areas we consider completely private today, Romans created businesses, developed specializations, and built trade networks. These economic systems also reinforced social hierarchies. The wealthy could afford comfortable, hygienic materials while the poor made do with whatever they could find. These differences in bathroom comfort weren't just about personal preference. They were markers of social status that everyone could observe and understand. Your choice of cleaning materials announced your place in society as clearly as your clothing or housing. The gender dynamics embedded in Roman bathroom practices reflect broader patterns of how Roman society organized itself around male public life and female domestic roles. Men spent time in public latrines conducting business and socializing, while women were largely excluded from these spaces and expected to handle bodily functions privately. This separation reinforced gender roles and limited women's participation in public life. Looking at the technological aspects, Roman bathroom solutions represent a fascinating example of appropriate technology. Without access to paper manufacturing, chemical processing, or modern materials, Romans developed solutions that were effective, sustainable, and manufacturable with available resources. Some of their solutions, like reusable fabric pieces or biodegradable corn cobs, were actually more environmentally sustainable than our modern disposable products. The social rules and etiquette surrounding Roman bathroom practices show how human societies create order and meaning around even the most basic biological functions. The elaborate protocols governing who could sit where, who got to use cleaning implements first, and how conversations should be conducted, all of this represents the human drive to create civilization and social structure in every possible context. These social systems also serve practical purposes. By creating clear hierarchies and behavioral expectations, Romans reduced conflicts and made shared facilities function more smoothly. The etiquette wasn't just about showing respect or displaying status. It was about making communal bathroom use actually work for large numbers of people. The decline of Roman bathroom infrastructure in later imperial periods tells a story about civilizational sustainability that resonates today. These elaborate public facilities required constant maintenance, significant financial investment, and social cooperation to function properly. As the empire weakened economically and politically, maintaining high-quality public infrastructure became increasingly difficult. This pattern of infrastructure decay preceding broader civilizational decline appears throughout history. The quality of basic public services like sanitation often serves as an early warning system for broader social and economic problems. When societies can no longer maintain the infrastructure that supports basic human dignity and health, other institutions usually follow. The archaeological preservation of Roman bathroom practices provides a unique window into aspects of daily life that are rarely documented in historical records. Most ancient texts focus on politics, warfare, and elite activities. Bathroom archaeology gives us access to the experiences of ordinary people, showing us how they actually lived rather than how their leaders wanted to be remembered. This archaeological evidence also reminds us that material culture often tells more accurate stories than written sources. The actual sponges, pottery shards, and stone implements found in Roman latrines provide concrete evidence of what people really used, rather than what medical texts or literary sources claim they should use. The medical understanding embedded in Roman bathroom practices shows both the achievements and limitations of ancient knowledge. Romans recognized connections between cleanliness and health, developed effective cleaning materials and techniques, and created public health infrastructure that supported large urban populations. But their lack of understanding about disease transmission meant that some of their most well-intentioned practices actually spread illness. This combination of practical wisdom and scientific ignorance appears throughout pre-modern medical practice. People observed cause and effect relationships and developed treatments that sometimes worked, but without understanding the underlying mechanisms, they often drew incorrect conclusions and created new problems while solving others. The survival and evolution of Roman bathroom practices in different regions after the empire's fall demonstrates how cultural practices persist and adapt even when political systems collapse. Elements of Roman hygiene techniques continued in medieval Europe, evolved in the Byzantine Empire, and influenced practices in Islamic territories that had once been Roman provinces. This cultural persistence suggests that successful solutions to basic human needs tend to survive political upheavals and social transformations. Good ideas about hygiene, food preparation, construction techniques, and other practical matters often outlast the civilizations that created them, spreading through cultural contact and adaptation. The contrast between Roman and modern bathroom practices highlights both how much and how little human nature has changed. We've solved the technical problems that challenged Romans. We have soft toilet paper, private facilities, and effective sanitation systems. But we still struggle with many of the same social and psychological issues around bodily functions, privacy, cleanliness, and social status. Our modern bathroom practices also reflect social hierarchies, economic inequalities, and cultural values, just in different ways than Roman practices did. The quality of bathroom facilities available to different social classes, the cultural taboos around bodily functions, and the economic systems built around hygiene products all echo patterns established in Roman times. What emerges from this entire exploration is a picture of human resilience, creativity, and adaptability in the face of universal biological challenges. Romans faced the same basic hygiene needs that all humans face, but they developed solutions using available materials, existing social structures, and practical knowledge gained through experience. Their solutions weren't always effective by modern standards, and some created new problems while solving others. But they worked well enough to support one of history's most successful civilizations for over 1,000 years. The fact that Romans could build roads, conquer territories, create literature, and govern vast populations while dealing with bathroom situations that would horrify modern people shows just how adaptable humans can be. The story of Roman bathroom practices also reminds us that progress isn't always linear or inevitable. Romans had access to many materials and techniques that could have solved their hygiene problems more effectively, but social conventions, economic constraints, and incomplete knowledge prevented them from implementing better solutions. Sometimes societies get stuck with suboptimal practices simply because they work well enough, and changing would require too much effort or disruption. This pattern of good enough solutions persisting even when better alternatives exist appears throughout history and continues today. Many modern practices in areas like transportation, energy, and communication persist not because they're optimal, but because they're adequate and the costs of changing seem too high. The Roman experience with bathroom hygiene also illustrates the importance of infrastructure and social cooperation for maintaining public health. The elaborate systems Romans created for water supply, waste disposal, and public facilities required enormous resources and sophisticated organization. When these systems worked, they supported healthy, prosperous urban populations. When they broke down, disease and social disorder quickly followed. This connection between infrastructure, public health, and social stability remains as important today as it was 2,000 years ago. The Roman example shows both how much human societies can achieve through collective effort and how fragile these achievements can be when social cooperation breaks down. Perhaps most importantly, the story of Roman bathroom practices reminds us that every aspect of human experience, no matter how mundane or embarrassing, reflects broader patterns of culture, economics, technology, and social organization. The way people handle basic bodily functions reveals their values, their available resources, their social structures, and their understanding of health and cleanliness. By taking Roman bathroom practices seriously as historical evidence rather than just amusing curiosities, we gain insights into how ancient societies actually functioned at the most basic level. This understanding helps us better appreciate both the achievements and limitations of ancient civilizations, while also recognizing patterns that continue to influence human societies today. The Romans built one of history's most impressive civilizations while using corn cobs and shared sponges for toilet paper. This fact should give us both humility about our own achievements and confidence about human adaptability. If Romans could create roads, aqueducts, and legal systems that still influence us today while dealing with bathroom situations that would send modern people running, imagine what we might accomplish by combining their determination and creativity with our superior technology and knowledge. In the end, the story of what Romans used instead of toilet paper is really the story of human civilization itself. Creative, messy, unequal, ingenious, and ultimately successful in finding ways to meet basic needs while building something greater than the sum of individual survival efforts. Every time you reach for toilet paper, you're participating in humanity's long struggle to solve fundamental problems while maintaining dignity, health, and social cooperation. That struggle continues today, and the Roman example suggests that success comes not from finding perfect solutions, but from developing adequate ones that can be sustained over time while gradually improving as knowledge and resources allow. The Romans didn't solve every problem, but they solved enough of them to build a civilization that lasted over 1,000 years and continues to influence us today. Perhaps that's the most important lesson from this entire exploration. Perfect solutions aren't necessary for success, but adequate solutions, social cooperation, and continuous adaptation are essential. The Romans had terrible toilet paper, but they had something more important: the collective will to keep trying to solve problems and build better lives for their communities. And ultimately, that's what every civilization needs to survive and thrive. Not perfect technology or ideal conditions, but creative problem solving, social cooperation, and the determination to keep building despite inevitable setbacks and limitations. The story of Roman bathroom practices is really the story of human civilization itself, told through one of its most basic and universal challenges.